And good morning. I'm Matt McLean, and alongside Patrick Tahan here on Over a Barrel. Thanks so much for joining us here for a bit of a special edition right here on Over a Barrel. And it all has to do with things that are going on in the southwestern United States. Patrick,
Yep.
we've got a lot of stuff going on right now when it comes to obviously what's taking place in Los Angeles with regard to the fires, but that is creating a little bit of an extra issue especially with fuel supply across not just Southern California, but surrounding states as well. So give us a rundown, talk to us about what's going on, and kind of explain why we are seeing potentially some issues that are beginning to come to the surface and develop.
Well, good to be with you, Matt. First of all, thinking about those in Southern California that are obviously dealing with the sheer devastation about what's happening there. The images are horrendous, and obviously, when people are losing everything, it's very, uh, very sad what's happening there. Having said that, to your point, the wildfires have created additional problems that we'd like to address. Certainly, it's something that we've spoken about, many times in the past about infrastructure. There are some impacts that the wildfires are having. One of those impacts now is starting to manifest in the city of Las Vegas. Yesterday, within the last couple of days, as a result of some of the forced power cuts, as a result of the wildfires, a lot of the time, um, trying to remember the name of the utility in Southern California that provides electricity to the area, but a lot of the time it's Southern California Edison, I believe. A lot of the time when wildfires happen, they start cutting power proactively to avoid further issues.
Right.
And unfortunately, that has now resulted in the loss of a pipeline that carries gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel over to other markets. I'll share with you a map here to highlight the issues that we're experiencing. This is now a map of the affected area. And if you look here on the map, you'll see that there's two pipelines here, the area of issue. First of all, if you look closer to Los Angeles, if you look there, just around Industry or Ontario, the pipeline diverges, it splits the SFPP, and then you have the CalNev that goes up to Las Vegas. Those pipelines are both halted for the time being. There's a booster station that has experienced a loss in power because of what's happening with the wildfires. And what that has meant is that now product that is being produced at refineries is not being pushed down those pipelines. And that means that areas of Phoenix are impacted. Although, if you look at the map here on your page, there are pipelines that come east from Texas. Refineries in Texas supply much of eastern Arizona. There's a major terminal in Tucson. They also flow into Phoenix. So there is still gasoline flowing into the Phoenix market. Right now, the difficulty is if you look at the Las Vegas portion of that, it is completely cut because of the loss of that booster station up the line closer to Los Angeles. So what that has meant, Matt, is that product is no longer actively flowing through here. And that's manifested really quickly in authorities which have probably not used the best wording here. Um, part of the problem now is that the Las Vegas Metro Police Department has said, this is not a huge worry, but that they're also filling up all their vehicles, which is a little bit of a conflicting statement there. Don't worry, but we're doing this. Probably a little bit more nuance could have been used there.
So let me ask you this. So we have other experiences with natural disasters like hurricanes and fuel interruptions, if you will, and supply interruptions. How big of an area could this domino into? In other words, I see, for example, Bakersfield. That's its own separate metro area north of the greater Los Angeles area.
Yeah.
How far into California does this go? How far into Arizona does this go? Do we supply to northern Mexico fuel there from Los Angeles, like electricity comes from Canada and some of our northern states? Kind of break that down for us, if you will, and let us know kind of,
Yeah.
what's out there is the best way to put it.
Well, Matt, I quickly pulled up a broader pipeline map there that you can see on your screen now. So, within California, there's still liquid pipelines that can bring gasoline up between these markets. Reno, Nevada. If you hear those in Clark County, which is Las Vegas, if you hear them talking um, Southern Nevada most, it's because Las Vegas, being the largest city in Nevada, is going to be more impacted. Reno still can get gasoline from refineries in Northern California. So there's the good news. I'm going to quickly share my screen here and
Hmm.
replace it with a version. Let's see if I can pull it up here. I'm not sure I can actually. I'm going to try and get this map pulled up somehow. But essentially, Matt, there are different racks throughout California that bring products in various areas of the state. And this is not by any means an exclusive map. But as I quickly try and figure out how to pull up Google Earth here, you'll be able to see that there are, here, I'll do it this way. This is a map of California. This is a map of rack terminals. This is where gasoline goes. One specific here is if you zoom into Las Vegas, you'll see that the airport has a couple terminals. But if you go up here towards Nellis Air Force Base, here's where the fuel is flowing into Las Vegas. And there's a small rack over here. I believe this is Rebel. It looks like they have two lanes here. These are refined products right here in these storage tanks. I believe this is mostly things like renewable diesel. But if you go across the street, there's a much bigger rack. It looks like they have 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 lanes, and you'll see there's a lot more product being stored here. So this is the area of Las Vegas. This is the CalNev terminal. It looks like this is where a lot of the bulk product that comes through that pipeline ends up, right around here. And then it gets delivered via truck. And then over here you have Nellis Air Force Base. There's probably some product terminals there as well. So anyway, if we zoom out, that blue mark is where the terminal is. And if you zoom all the way back out, you'll see that there's not a whole lot of other options anywhere around here.
Yeah.
So now Bakersfield, as you mentioned, I mean, the pipeline, there are pipelines that run up here. So Bakersfield, they may not be impacted compared to the rest of the state. And as you zoom in here, here's some more products. It looks like there's a small scale refinery that may be the Shell. Yeah. So, every market's a little bit different. But essentially, I mean, this is the way the fuel flows, right? It's produced at refineries. And by the way, I'll take this off. Let me put up refineries here. And then you get all these refineries here, and they're all over Southern California. Now, most of the fire is I believe in the Palisades area. So, we're talking about, I believe, up here ish, north of Santa Monica. So like right around here. And I could be off. I'm not obviously somebody that lives in Los Angeles, but essentially, Matt, most of the fuel is still being produced at refineries in Southern California. The bulk of the problem now is that, as I share this slide here again, the bulk of the problem is that the fuel flowing from, again, if I pull this map up, the pipeline is severed over here near Los Angeles because of a loss of power on the booster station.
Understood. So then basically, if we are to paint a picture, if you will, and sort of isolate this down, Phoenix has a method to be able to receive fuel from alternative sources. I don't want to call it upstate California because that's not really fair, but anything north of Los Angeles, potentially that can be a limited impact as well because there are other sources. Is that what I heard you say?
Right. Yeah. If you look at this map here, that one pipeline has been severed very close to Los Angeles. So that's the one product pipeline here. And so there's, if you look here, that would be generally insulated. That may be a different line. Generally, pipelines are going to have multiple lines. So in this case, there still may be product flowing north, but it may not be flowing east. And as you mentioned, there is an alternative in Arizona, but it's, Phoenix has been a booming metro for the last 5-10 years. A lot of folks have been moving into the warmer climate, so
Yeah.
Phoenix could have some challenges as well. But it's really just all in people understanding that the problem is it's one booster station that doesn't have power. This is not a hurricane that's knocked out many refineries, right? That's a key difference to note here, is that gasoline is still being produced. As soon as the booster station comes back online, that gasoline instantly starts flowing back out of the pipeline. So the reason why some people in Las Vegas are now seeing lines at gas stations and some stations that don't have fuel is because stations are trying to keep caught up. Imagine if your business suddenly sees an explosion of like 10 times the amount of demand the next day, right? That's the kink in the hose, is it's getting tanker trucks to the rack, filling up, and then coming back to the station and dropping it off in time. And I will say now, the pipeline, or I should say that the rack that I zoomed in on, has placed a lot of customers under allocation. What that means is that a customer is allocated basically 100%. It depends. They can allocate you at 80%, 100%, 120%. Basically, they say you're now limited in how much gasoline you can buy from us because of the situation. And so when you're on allocation, that means that there's something happening, because now you're restrained as a gas station. They're now restrained in how much they can buy. And that is probably going to dovetail into stations that may not be able to buy enough gasoline, because if they've sold through 100% of what they normally do, they may be blocked from buying more because a supplier or a distributor may say, well, you're allocated. You've used your allocation. We can't give you more because everyone is asking for more. So how can they potentially fulfill all of that? They can't.
So let me ask you a question along these particular lines. When it comes to the Las Vegas metro area, understandably, it isn't just the population that resides there, but it's obviously a tourism mecca, kind of similar to Orlando and other places across the country. They've had the slogan, "What happens in Vegas stays." I mean, it's been many years now, decades. So the point that I'm trying to make is obviously it's not just the populace that lives there, but tourism that also utilizes fuel and other aspects as well, much like Orlando and Tampa and other areas where the population could double or triple in size depending. So let's talk about just a little bit here. You're talking about allocations and other aspects when it comes to fuel supply. Again, I think it's very important to note that so far there's no damage in any way, shape, or form to anything that is producing oil or gasoline and other fuel. It's just simply the boosters and the other aspects that are without power right now. The pipeline itself is not damaged. The methods that move the fuel through are not damaged.
Right.
It's just a matter of a power supply that is not able to push the fuel on through. And I think that's a very important aspect. As you mentioned, this is not a hurricane situation or other situation where the infrastructure has been actually damaged. It's
Right.
just we need fuel, or we need a power supply they need to turn the power back on, but they can't necessarily do that. So how long of a problem do you expect this to be? Potential problem, I guess, for the Las Vegas area. How long would it normally take to get things back to a sense of normalcy at this point?
I mean, it's going to vary, right? We don't really know when the booster station, when power is going to be restored. So it's a little difficult to know at this moment how long it's going to be. I would generally hope that it probably would be less than a week. But I think the $1 million question, Matt, is I'm diving into National Weather Service statements. When will the wildfires in California let up? That's the problem here. Is these Santa Ana winds are tremendously strong. They could continue to blow for the next few days, and so power could be a challenge for the next few days as long as there's the potential fire hazard. Right? There's still a red flag warning for much of Southern California. So, the challenge is when will this alleviate? And we don't really know the answer, but it does look like there will be some breaks here and there. There are other potential things that the pipeline operator may be able to do as well to get this pipeline going again. So those are kind of a lot of the open-ended questions here. Is we're just there's a lot of answers or a lot of questions and not a whole lot of answers, just because Mother Nature is rather unpredictable.
So at this particular point, and again, we don't want to hype, or we're trying to prevent that in every aspect. So we want to just present facts, right? And actual truthful facts, not try to lean into creating, a panic or a false sense of security, but just be realistic in everything that's being kind of talked about. Obviously, the longer this goes on, are there other methods that Las Vegas can receive fuel? Are they, for example, hurricanes in the southeastern U.S., they'll start lining up fuel tanker trucks and trucking it into certain metro areas to keep fuel going. So is that something? The southwestern U.S. has almost no hurricane experience. It's an extremely rare day for Los Angeles to get hit by it. Just the Pacific just doesn't work that way.
Right.
It has happened in history, but very rare. Do you think, methods in place like the southeastern U.S. has contingency plans on it? Do you think that the southwestern U.S. Would utilize something along those lines to keep fuel coming into the metro area?
It's a difficult thing because these are the pipeline's out of sight, out of mind until it's not, right? When you lose power, it becomes very problematic. And by the way, keep in mind too that while gasoline is probably one of the primary fuels that's flowing through this pipeline, this also will impact potentially diesel and jet fuel and other products too. So there's not a great way to mitigate this. Some of the options include generators that could be brought into the booster station. I don't know what the capacity is. There's laws and regulations that you have to navigate to be able to do that and to be able to bring that in. And there's also some risk as well. So, it's unknown at this point. If there's any other options. I'm sure everyone, is working on this, just because as a company, you don't like to see interruptions to delivery. You do everything you can to offset it. Companies don't make money when product is not moving. So there's probably a lot of eyes on what's happening. And, I would hope that they'll be quick they'll be as quick to restore it as they possibly can.
Yeah, that's the key. And so understandably, it is, and if you're in an impacted area, it's obviously always a concern. And, as you mentioned, right now, there doesn't seem to be a huge problem by any stretch of the imagination, but it is something that GasBuddy is monitoring. And understandably so. And so the GasBuddy app and other ways to be able to find fuel at this point, help us navigate that as a consumer, Patrick. What do folks need to do? As you mentioned, potentially allocations and other aspects where a station could temporarily be without gasoline because they've gone through their allocation for the day, but I'm coming home from work in Los Angeles and I still need to fuel up. So what do people need to do? And before I even let you answer that, a quick reminder for those of you watching, we are monitoring the comments. You're more than welcome to ask your own version of questions on the different methods that we are broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube and the other aspects. So feel free to ask and we'll get to those questions as well. But what are things that folks can do in order to kind of limit and help them out in a situation like that, should their regular station, if you will, temporarily be on short supply because of allocations?
Well, I think the first question is, do you need gasoline? Do you absolutely need what you need, right? Is your tank a half full? Are you looking to fill up just because you're nervous and everybody else is? So let's take a step back here, because it's hard. It's a hard emotion, right? When you see everyone else is gathering in lines, people have this mentality of they're missing out on something. First of all, you're not missing out. People are just getting overly cautious and want to sit on a full tank of gasoline when there's plenty of gasoline. But if everyone has that mentality of going out and buying the next big thing all at once, it's going to run out. So the difficulty now is that there's gasoline being produced There's gasoline that's going to be ready to be put in the pipeline. But I would tell people to try and adjust your behaviors. If you normally fill up on a Friday, wait a couple of days. If you can avoid filling your tank up, if everyone does that, there's not going to be a problem. If you buy 5 gallons instead of 10, that's a terrific start to try and reduce your consumption. And that's why you're seeing authorities like the city of Las Vegas is saying avoid heavy driving, is because they want to reduce demand. Because reducing demand, if people would either stop driving or stop, filling up their tank with no reason, right? If you're not immediately going to use that gasoline, the problem is you're shifting gasoline from one storage to another. And so people panic buy and they hoard. And that's really most of the situation here is not a pipeline outage problem. It's that people suddenly overnight are buying 400 and 500% of what they normally do. And the system just can't keep up with it. So
it creates a domino effect. It literally creates that domino effect. Or better yet, what I would call a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, because people are talking about it. Then the panic ensues, which is not necessarily warranted. Then they see the lines. Then the trigger in their mind says, well, I should be in line, but I'm on 3/4 of a tank of gas. But then I should be in line because everyone else is in line. And what if I run out of gas before it becomes that self-fulfilling situation as a domino effect all the way around. And that's the key to try. And it's tough. It's tough to prevent that in many aspects. But it's important to at least try.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely to your point. I mean, if everyone was out of that mindset, we wouldn't have a problem. So, that's where most of the difficulty is right now, is that, people are filling up. They don't necessarily need to. And, that's creating a lot of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are seeing it only as a single booster that's kind of created a bottleneck in the transfer of fuel from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Is that to kind of boil it down? That's the one thing that you're seeing right now.
I mean, yeah, that's the problem. Is that there's just this pipeline lost power, and so they're not able to get material through it, at least for now. So as soon as they get power back, Matt, gasoline right now is not flowing through the pipeline, right? Because there's loss of a booster station. But as soon as the power comes back, we'll come back.
So I do have one viewer is asking the question, what about Los Angeles itself? How about fuel supply there? So that's a great question. I mean, this is where the epicenter of a lot of stuff is happening. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Los Angeles, as I mentioned, there are several refiners there. I'm not aware of any impacts to the refineries in Southern California at all. So Los Angeles fuel is not an issue in any way, shape, or form. Thankfully, because you have refineries there, you don't rely on a pipeline to deliver your gasoline very far. Not only that, but as I mentioned, I don't believe that there's been a power loss at any of these facilities yet. A lot of them lie quite a bit southeast and even down towards Long Beach. So they're a little bit more isolated from what's happening. If power becomes a challenge for those refineries, it may be a little bit different. But for now, there's not as much concern about fuel in Southern California as there is in areas that are served by the pipeline that's down. Basically, Las Vegas is probably the challenge. Phoenix is a challenge to a lesser degree, but this is really not the end of the world. I mean, this is in terms of gasoline supply. I mean, what's happening with the wildfires is certainly very devastating compared to what's happening with gasoline supply. So once the utility restores power, gasoline is going to be there.
Yeah, and we want to, again, boil that down just a little bit. Obviously, folks in San Diego and other places off to the south really not seeing any issues at all. It's a very volatile situation, as fires often are. I grew up, in the Midwest, actually in the Mark Twain National Forest, and there were times where we had forest fires. There was a time when I was a kid where we essentially had to evacuate as well, and it looked like our house was going to be lost. So I firsthand understand the fear that can happen in those moments for those who are residing in the areas impacted, and it is terrifying. at the
Yeah.
thought of all of that. And so your adrenaline's already pumping and you don't need an extra worry on top of that. So for those of you in Los Angeles, it really is okay for now. Understandably that fires are very volatile. The Santa Ana winds are not done. And we don't want any new fires to take place, but no one wanted the fires that are there to take place either. So it's just kind of a balanced situation where you keep informed, but try not to worry so much about anything, and just kind of keep the finger to the pulse, so to speak, so that you kind of know your surroundings. You kind of know what's going on. As Patrick just said, the refineries right now are not impacted. And so basically, we are just talking about Southern Nevada. That is a very good question. We've talked specifically about Las Vegas, but outside of Las Vegas, one would assume, like every other place in America, that certain ports and certain areas, obviously Las Vegas doesn't have a port per se, but certain areas that distribute fuel, how
Right.
big of an impact around and beyond Las Vegas could this potentially have as well?
Well, I mean, a lot of areas around Las Vegas, Southern Nevada, a lot of the fuel comes through that pipeline into Las Vegas. So if we go back to our map here, I'll quickly try and pull this back up. I mean, Northwest Arizona, Southern Nevada, it's probably going to be a little bit problematic to find fuel while this pipeline's disrupted. For now, Matt. The other interesting dynamic here is that there's different types of gasoline at play depending on where you are. California is a different type of gasoline than other areas do. And as you see here on the map, I mean, these are kind of the only, this is a refinery map, but this is also refined products. Let me turn on the terminals. There we are. So there's not a whole lot of options if you're in Nevada. It's basically only Reno in the northern part of the state and Las Vegas. I mean, aside from a terminal on the border here, this is a pretty barren area when it comes to refined products. I mean, look at the rest of the country.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's out west, it's just a bit more sparse. I mean, even in Oregon, I mean, look at the terrain here, though. I mean, that's certainly part of the problem. But if we dive in here, there's a lot of terminals in Southern California as you move east as well. Looks like the BNSF terminal here, and then Las Vegas. And this is one of the stops on the pipeline as well. So trains may be having difficulty here. And then Las Vegas is, if you draw a circle around this whole area, there's not a whole lot of population outside of this area. But, Dolan Springs is going to be impacted, Sandy Valley, Good Springs, Indian Springs. So, to your point, you mentioned, it's not summer. So demand for gasoline tends to be a little bit lower this time of year. So hopefully that'll provide at least a little bit of breathing room in this situation. But, our thoughts with you if you're in Southern California. A lot of devastation there, but wanted to focus on what's happening with this pipeline disruption. Matt, it's been a little bit, it's been interesting watching how authorities are reacting to this in Las Vegas, trying to keep the peace, but at the same time, maybe not using the delicacy of the situation very right. But to your point, we'll continue watching this.
Well, and I'll throw out there, emergency responders and other folks that stand in front of a microphone, they're people too. And the amount of stress and tension that they are under right now, just simply trying to get a grasp on all of this stuff. And yeah, it is their job to say all the right words and to try to keep the peace and keep the calm. But when is the last time the Los Angeles area had such a huge situation like this, where it can be a little unnerving, even for people who stand in front of the microphones? And maybe because I've been in the news media for since the 1990s, I have a little grace to some degree, probably more than the generalized consumer would have, because I know how easy it is to accidentally say something and then regret that. The old Anchorman movie run, where I immediately regret that decision, right? I mean, they said it, but it's too late. You can't take it back. It's again, self-awareness and helping yourself understand what's going on, factually speaking, I think is the best way for anybody to kind of look at any kind of a situation like this or any kind of an emergency, actually. So Yeah, maybe they could have chosen words better, but I mean, they're under an enormous amount of pressure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not an easy situation, all things around. But yeah, hopefully folks will find a little bit of information here. Matt, the other thing I'd mentioned to you is authorities. Let me share this here a minute. Fuel pipeline expected to Las Vegas, expected restart Friday amid fires, says the county. A fuel pipeline was expected to restart Friday. But if you notice, it's Clark County Office of Emergency Management, but there's not really any sort of, they say a solution has been put in place which will power the Kinder Morgan fuel line. I think what they're actually referring to, Matt, is what I had said, which is they're going to truck fuel in. They're not going to restart the pipeline. So
right.
That could be problematic, but we'll keep an eye on it. We'll update everyone on what's happening.
And I saw something else there, which was also important in their statement. The public is encouraged not to panic buy. That's kind of what we were talking about, is to make sure that people, are responsible. I mean, we all have our moments of responsibility, right? We all have a self-responsibility too. So the panic buy situation will exacerbate the problem. So as Patrick just mentioned, if you need fuel, that's one thing. If you've got 3/4 of a tank and you're only going to be using, a tenth of a gallon to get from point A to point B, then you probably don't need fuel at that moment. So
yeah, and just try to relax.
Yeah.
I mean, fuel will be there. If you look at this massive line here, this was last night in Las Vegas. Here's what the Las Vegas Metro Police Department said, though, that I wish they'd have been a little bit more delicate. We are fueling our vehicles. I don't really understand why they would. We are fueling our vehicles, but we want to assure you there's no emergency.
Yeah, that's one of those moments where I said, you've already said it and you can't take it back, but it's probably something you regret saying. People are human. We're all human beings. And even the people who stand in front of microphones and make statements are human beings. Probably not the best choice of words, but it's said now and you can't take it back. So it is kind of what it is. You're exactly right. We're fueling our vehicles, but you guys don't worry. That's probably not the best thing for a public information officer to say, understandably, but I have been holding microphones in front of hundreds of PIOs across the country, and I've heard quite a few of them say some things that they probably immediately regretted, and it happened because they're under an enormous amount of pressure to try to keep the peace, keep calm, keep all of these things in a situation. So yeah, that was probably something they may have wanted to have said just slightly differently.
Maybe next time down the road, they'll maybe work on that statement a little bit better.
They'll refine that just a little bit there.
Just a little bit.
Bit.
Well, Matt, as we close out, we'll continue to keep everyone updated on socials. I'm Gas Buddy Guy on X. I'll be tweeting out updates throughout the day. You can find Matt over a barrel Matt also on X. And if anything warrants a situation, we will be posting to social. If we need to do another video to get more information out there on the situation as it develops, we'll be able to do that. You can follow Gas Buddy, of course, on all the socials, YouTube, Facebook, X, all the accounts. I'm Gas Buddy Guy on X, and he's over Barrel Matt. But thanks for joining us for a couple minutes to review the situation in the Southwest in regards to the fuel situation. Our thoughts and prayers with those in California as they battle wildfires. But for now, so long, and we'll see you back here soon.